And Jessica, welcome. Glad you're
Hi,
on today.
thank
Hi.
you.
I'm
Hi.
wanting to just discuss your face-to-face meetings. Everybody on today is going to be sharing face-to-face meetings. So can you tell us a little bit about yours and the pictures below?
Sure. So we had some face-to-face meetings last week and the week before, which was our first since COVID started. So we were really excited to have people back in the hotel and to be live and active
Congratulations.
again. And yeah. So what you can see here from these diagrams are some setups where we've done social distancing, and of course you can see on the left some theater seating 6 feet apart, and then on the right some schoolroom seating. That's 3 6-foot tables with one per each 6 foot. And then on the diagram at the top, you can see we have about 40 attendees here with 3 at each 6-foot banquet round.
And at this meeting, how did it have food service?
We did. We had food service out in the foyer. Yeah. So we did breakfast and lunch for these, and we did an all-day coffee service station as well that had an attendant. So everything did have an attendant. Yeah. Here you can see on the left, you can see our boxed snack break. So that was our PM snack break that we dropped on each table at each seat. And then in the middle, this was from a reception we did. These are our cheese displays with covers on them that people could come up and take. And then on the right, you can see some more packaged items that attendees can take with them, and then also a coffee urn where they can fill their cup without having to touch anything. And then on the right, again, is a table snack that we dropped at each seat.
There's a lot of talk on our chat right now about sustainability, and I know a lot of the stuff we're doing are plastics and paper right now. I think that the companies need to actually get more creative and have time to innovate and come up with ideas that are sustainable. But what are you guys doing to offer sustainable options to companies that are concerned about that?
Yeah, it's a great topic that's come up from our planners is how sustainable are these prepackaged items. So like you can see in the picture in the middle, we're covering it with glassware that we already have. Everything is recyclable. We do recycle on site, and then anything that is left over, we do donate any food products that we can. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that glass idea over the top, we saw that last week on our call with somebody else that was doing it. That's a really creative way to do it and not use plastic. So I really appreciate you doing that. Can we go back to the seating chart slide real quick? I think David had a question or wanted to see that. How big are those rounds again?
Those are 72 inches.
Okay, and so that creates some distancing. Can you talk a little bit about the flow?
Yeah, so you can see on the diagram, if you look in at the entrances, we did some floor markers and door stickers too. So you came in on the right side and we aisled it out, and then we had do not enter signs on the ends of the aisles, and then back in, and then we had two exit options, and we did some rope and stanchion as well to create divides so people weren't walking past each other.
Perfect. Okay. Great, Jessica. I really appreciate you taking time to share your slides and your meeting with us and kind of get us on the right track. And we're going to bring you back on in just a little bit. But for right now, I'm going to invite Janet Gregg from Meadowood, Napa Valley on to discuss her recent face-to-face meetings. Welcome back, Janet. Glad to have you.
Great. I'm happy to be back. I really appreciate this invitation to come back and talk about meetings again. Sadly, in California, we're still highly restricted as to what we can do in terms of gatherings. Right now, the regulations state no more than 6 people. So what we've done with food and beverage too, because all food and beverage has to be served outdoors, is even our Michelin 3-star restaurant, we have moved it to some of our outdoor lawn areas. So we're offering that Michelin experience outdoors.
Yeah, and I think outdoor is like the best practice for most of these. Can you talk a little bit about the meeting space, the picture we have up right now, what that meeting is and how you have the setups?
Yeah, so actually this was an event that I attended. So I was, this is from an attendee perspective.
Fantastic.
So see in the center of that meeting, there were seating for about 16 to 18 of us in that room. and it was done in a hollow square.
Mhm.
We're seated at six feet apart. I did find that setup was a little bit cumbersome, just because of the distancing and being able to speak with the person who was diagonally across the room from you. So I would suggest, this was a very brief 30-minute meeting, but I would suggest if you are doing a setup like that in the future, you probably would need microphones just because of the massive distance between people. But when we entered the room, we entered one way and exited another. Again, brief meeting. They had a bottle of water for each of us on the table for that. Now, the photo to the right, this was actually the general session setup. We had 48 people in this room, and it was stunning. All of us had a very comfortable chair with a side table, and our name was on the chair when we walked into the room. So that was our spot for 2 days. We never changed where we were seated or where we were seating to keep our little area safe.
And that's like a best practice right now, rotating speakers through versus rotating attendees so that you're in the same spot the whole time. I noticed that the individuals don't have masks around the table right now. Just for those that are online, can you talk about why that is, and did they have them on before that?
Yes, so we were required to wear a mask whenever we were up and moving around. Once we were seated, we were allowed to take our masks off. So that was, and all the chairs were 6 feet apart. And the planner said she went chair to chair to make sure that it was exactly 6 feet and not even 1 inch less. So that was very safe. And if you got up just to use the restroom or get another refreshment, you did have to put your mask on. So it was done very safely. And I did find out afterwards that once we left the room, there were housekeepers that came in with sanitizing machinery, and they sanitized the chair and our table as well. So there were every time there was a break, they would circle through and spray down. It was sort of a steam type sanitizing machine. So that was very safe. We did do breakouts as well, and they were done in a small, I don't think we have a picture of that in here.
No, just speak to what you did.
Yeah, so the breakouts were done very creative. The table for each breakout was a pallet, a wooden pallet. And then there were things like some bean bags and comfortable chairs around that. So there were 6 people in each breakout, and we did have to wear masks for the breakout because we were closer together during that discussion period. So again, all the attendees, we were handed a code of conduct when we registered, and we just read all the rules and the yeses and nos. And it was just such a fabulous experience. It was my first time traveling, getting on a plane. And I'm telling you, from a travel standpoint, I felt that this is a great time to travel. The airports were clean. They're not that busy. The airlines, at least the airline that I was flying on, was not filling up middle seats, but there were only 60 passengers on a 140 passenger plane. So it's the first time in ages that I've had an entire row to myself.
Good.
So it was an experience. And one thing that they did, which kind of solved some of the questions that have come up, is we had 2 dinners. And
let's move to the food and beverage slide real quick while you talk about this. Talk about the food and beverage and the setup of that. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is actually pictures of breakfast and lunch. So on the right, lunch was set up with Queen Mary's. So when there were stanchions set, so you walked in one direction and exited from another direction. There were hand sanitizing stations at the beginning of the food line. And then each of us were given a bamboo tray. It was a beautiful tray. And this luncheon was done in an Asian theme. The signage was very clear as to which items were on each shelf. And they were all done in small portions, so you could pick and choose a couple different flavors. And then you just kind of moved along the line. They kept everyone 6 feet apart. And again, we were wearing masks as we went through the food line. And then the lunch setup was actually outdoors in 72-inch rounds with 3 people per round. Again, everyone out. Breakfast was done in a similar fashion. However, there was actually a server who would hand you your food item. So they had different egg wraps, muffin type.
I'm assuming the server had a mask on and gloves when they handed that to you. Okay.
Yes, and so did we. So we were wearing masks as we went through the line.
And I don't think, I mean, I think a lot of people that are online are talking about the sustainability, and on this thing, it looks like they use plasticware for most everything. And those of you who are, thinking about options for that, that may be a side company you may want to think about starting up. For all of us in here that are trying to find creative ways to do it, we do need some options, more options that are sustainable. But in the short run, this pandemic has put us into a whirlwind of best practices that do include using paper and plastic more frequently. Janet, I want to thank you for your time in showing the food and beverage. I really appreciate that, and your meeting room set and your attendee experience. I'm going to have you back on in just a few moments. Right now, I'd like to bring Erin Mosser from Gaylord Texan on. And I'd like, Erin, welcome to the show for the first time. Glad to have you.
Thank you for the invite.
And Erin, can you talk to us a little bit about your meeting room set?
Yes, this one right here was set. If you can see the white squares is where the chairs are over here on the theater style, and those were there was 3 chairs between each set there, and then over here on the other side, this is the tables, and those are 1 for 6. So we were able to get in one room over in theater style close to 3,000 people, and in this room right here, this is I'm sorry, this is our Grapevine Ballroom, so this is only about 2,200 people, and then in the set right there, it was a little less than 850 people, I believe, that was in classroom style.
For those that are on that are mentioning, I mean, it looks like it's a super crowded room, right? And that's a lot of people to have in one space. How are you controlling flow for this meeting to make sure that there's not cross-contamination, or, that there's not issues with that?
Yeah, so for this group, we when they registered, the group took the most of the responsibility that the hotel didn't have to do. So when the person registered, they had to get their temperature checked. They had to answer all these different questions, and then they were given a color wristband that they wore. And downstairs, they would corral everybody that had that colored wristband on, and they walked single file upstairs and got in to pick their seat out. And that was their seat for the whole time. So a lot of these times that people were sitting there with their families, and they're because this was a multi-level marketing group, so their families were together. They were able to sit next to each other if they needed to, but that whole time the company took responsibility. So if the person didn't have their mask on, somebody from that group would tell them, you gotta have your mask on or you can't come into the meeting. They could only come in one way, had to exit out the other way. And it just worked out well. It was wonderful seeing 2,200 people in my property that week. So, and to give you an idea, this group booked this meeting in the 1st of June, and they had it in July last month. So that's how quick they operated on this.
And how did you get people? How did you dismiss people from the room?
They had to get up, and
they
dismissed them by their colors. So basically, whoever came in last went up first. And so there was no, everybody was separated by the 6 feet and all that kind of stuff. And they had to go off to either their breakout or whatever the next function is they had planned for them.
And I've heard of the wristband thing before. It's usually has been used in the terms of how comfortable you are with the spatial distancing. I really like the idea of using it in terms of how you're exiting and entering rooms. How much distance was there between attendees for both of these sets?
That in this set right here, it's a 6 feet by 6 feet. So it's 6 feet between each aisle and 6 feet between all the seats and all that stuff. Yeah, there were 6 feet by 6 feet aisles.
And was every attendee required to sit in the same chair throughout your meeting?
That is correct. Yeah, once you sat in that seat, you had that seat the whole time.
That's fantastic. I think that's, like I said before, that's like a best practice. And it says 2,200, somebody's saying there, I think their thing just disappeared. How was the AV set up?
Very minimal. It happened so quick. They had screens, they had a stage, and then they had 2 big screens on each side of the stage. And then they had another screen. It doesn't show it on here yet, but they have another screen that was about halfway down the meeting room for them to see. I think I sent a picture that showed that meeting room that way.
Did you guys provide arrows or like signage or anything? And did the group provide some? How did the signage and the arrows on the floor, or how did that work for this meeting? And
So
what was your guys' involvement in some of it?
They had their they used human arrows, so they had people that were lined up that had everybody standing in line. If somebody stepped out of line, they would get onto them and all that. So basically that. But we did have, inside of the hotel, in the atrium and everything like that, we do have stickers that say, reminding everybody to stay 6 feet apart. When you were checking in at the front desk, we had stickers there in line for people to make sure they were spread out and everything. So yeah, there is signage, there's stuff all over the floors that just kind of pinpoint everything what everybody needs to do to maintain the social distancing.
Did you have any rotating between sessions for that meeting?
Actually, it was just a general session. So they were in there for a long time, and then they would go and take a break, or they would go out for their meals, and then they would come right back. So, but the whole process had to start all over again.
And then talk about the food delivery service, the time, was it lengthy? How long did it take? How did the flow work for it?
So this particular slide right here was for a different meeting that we did. As you can see, the room is set a lot different. This was a hybrid meeting that we had about 110 people in that room there, and then the rest was online. But yeah, so the chefs right there, they're preparing everything. You can see the the plastic shields. They would prepare it, and then we'd have a person that would stand outside of there, and they had their gloves and their mask on, and they would hand that to the individual that walked up and asked for that.
So if you had 2,200 people doing something, that seems like lines would be long. How would you control that with that larger group, or how did you control it?
So what we did was we did a pre-sale at their registration, so they could come over and they could pick. We had 3 different types of food items for each meal for them. And what they would do is they would do that, and then we had our restaurants. We only had 1 restaurant open, so they could go grab their food. They could either take it up to their room, or we had tables and chairs outside of all the other restaurants that weren't open that they could go and sit down there. But what they would do is they would go down, they would grab their food. It was pretty much already pre-packaged. Bamboo, I think, is going to be something everybody should be investing in, because I think that's going to be the new way. So we had these bamboo bowls that were they had barbecue options, all that kind of stuff, and they could we would just throw the barbecue on there. It would already be preheated in a hot box, and they would just come and get it. Everything else was prepackaged, their bottled waters and anything else or sodas, whatever they had, and they would grab it, put it in their bag, and they would take off. The process was really simple and
That's
made it
great.
really easy. Yeah.
I love to hear those things. And somebody's asking a question back on the last slide. You don't turn to the last slide, leave it here. But when the 2,200 people got up or they were exiting by color, did you watch that? How long did it take to exit for 2,200?
They had people. We had certain doors opened up, so it would probably be about 3 double doors that were opened up, and yeah, so their people would say, okay, if you have a blue wristband on, please now exit the room, and they would do it. And it would basically, they would wait 5 to 10 minutes before everybody, they would call the next color just to make sure everybody was out and out of the foyer area and all that.
That's fantastic. Good, because it gives them a chance to really control the cross flow and everything for that. On the restrooms on your floor, how did you guys handle? There's a lot of questions that I've had pop up recently about restrooms. A lot of people are nervous about that. What is your property doing to address that?
They're in there cleaning. We have the electrostatic sprayers. So even when they adjourned from the meeting, we had those things in there, cleaning all the rooms. Then we would come back, and our staff would put signs on the door that say that this room has been cleaned. The same thing with the restrooms. After every big turn, we would go about every 2 hours, go in there, clean everything down, make sure the towels were all in place and all that. The soaps dispensaries were completely full.
So
the hand sanitizers.
I'm sorry, Aaron, just to interrupt you. It was more about the number of people. With 2,200 people, usually you have a line out the door anyway. How was that process managed to make sure that there weren't too many people in the restroom at the same time because of the spatial distancing really requirements?
Right. We have, our bathrooms are huge on our convention center floor, and we've got in both sides of the convention center. So I think all in all, there's probably, I don't even want to tell you what the number is. It was kind of controlled by them, but we never really saw any long lines going to the restroom because people were going in and out during the meeting when the meeting was going on. So it didn't seem like it was an issue that ever popped up.
Perfect. Thank you, Erin. I really appreciate you being on, and you're going to come back on in just a few moments, but thank you for sharing this. I'd like to welcome Hillary Patriquin from Host Global on. Hillary, welcome back. I'm so glad to have you on today, and I am excited. This is the first time I've seen some of the options that you're presenting here, so go ahead and explain to the audience what this is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, not only do meetings mean business, but we're all in this business to create beautiful and exciting events. So what we're working on is customizing with our creative and design partners unique ways that incorporate the safety elements into the overall design. So it still feels like an exciting experiential environment for all the guests to be interacting with. So you'll first see this cocktail wheel table, which perspective-wise is very large, like it's human size for people to get to. It's a way to limit interaction between a bartender and the attendee. So this is a cocktail wheel where each thing is individually poured. People can go up and grab it at their own pace. The bar above in the right-hand corner, that is completely plexiglass separated from the guests. So that could be used for food service, for beverage service. And now it's also oversized, so there's plenty of space behind the glass for back of house people to be 6 feet apart and separated, while still incorporating some of the wonderful elements of food service and beverage service. And then lastly, that bottom picture is just a fun way to deliver food. This is a perfectly enclosed space that is kind of coming out from back of the house where it's a pulley system. So it's just a fun way to deliver food to guests and have like an experiential interactive moment while still being safety conscious as well.
Are you guys doing anything for as far as sustainability goes in your delivery systems?
Yeah, we are focusing, as Erin mentioned, on bamboo and utilizing that as much as possible, limiting plastics, trying to use glass and containers that can be compostable or recyclable. A lot of our catering partners focus on that already, so it's just kind of including that and elevating it moving forward.
And I think somebody's bringing up why, they asked why bamboo, and I think why bamboo is because it's it's a sustainable product, and it's a already one that's being used, just not as used as plastics and paper. So it's a good option that's not super expensive. It's more expensive than plastic and paper, but it's a good sustainable option. Can you tell us any other? Go ahead.
No, I was just saying cost-wise, bamboo is not prohibitive either because it's very easy to produce. So it's a good option to consider.
Yeah, I say when we plant the bamboo plants, they take over everything. So they do grow crazy. Okay, so the cocktail wheel, are people all touching the same area to spin the wheel? How does it work?
They're sanitized. Yeah, so essentially you're reaching in and grabbing your one glass. They're sanitizing between. This was a client. Again, every conversation that you're going to have for hybrid meetings or in-person events is about the clients and the attendees' level of comfort. So this client felt like this was more comfortable for them as a way so they weren't behind plexiglass with a bartender. This was something that they felt comfortable doing.
So they were more comfortable with each other than they were with having somebody from the hotel for it. And again, you're going to hear this over and over again. It's about the collaboration and really trying to find something that works for both the client, the hotel, that works for safety and for the attendees. And so this may not be for everybody, but it could be for some of you, and that's what we're trying to get at, is some creative options for having these types of meetings. Thank you, Hillary. I'll have you back on again. Sure. And I'm going to welcome Nicole Unger from Alliance Nationwide Exposition on. This is Nicole's first time of being on together, and she is the one responsible for the Together Again Expo, which is we're going to have a video playing. And while that video is playing, Nicole and I are going to talk about a little bit about this meeting. Can you tell us a little bit about it and what we're looking at down here? How many in-person people, how many in-person people did we have, and all the details?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Michelle, for having us on. Together Again Expo was the first expo held during this pandemic. It was designed to bring hope and safety and have basically a live demonstration of how events look in this new world. Yeah. What you're seeing on here is extensive sanitation, touchless registration, thermal monitoring, fever checking coming through the door, social distancing, personal protective equipment, and basically, we had 1,405 live attendees at this event. We held it in space that was about 230,000 square feet, which provided a great amount of social distance. Masks were required at all times. No handshaking, no hugging. But we had a lot of interest. You can see the education session back there we had a presentation area with 6 feet social distanced chairs, stationary, that were sanitized after every session. And we also had some other additional measures. I know I'm forgetting right now, but as far as the event went, we also had 8,225 virtual views. So there was a lot of people watching from afar. But the overview of the conference was, it was a one-day event. We had a lot of COVID-specific education, and it was focused very much on reopening and how to safely do that. A lot of people have been hard at work behind the scenes with new products, sanitation, protective devices. So there was a lot of that incorporated into the event as well. So it was all encompassing. It was a way to bring the industry back together, but it was also designed to be a resource and an education tool for all of us who are trying to reestablish the industry and put everything back together in this new environment.
Thank you, Nicole, for being at the forefront of this. It's just fantastic to see, and to see how well you guys did it was great. I know I had Cornelia from the Hyatt Orlando on last week, and she was saying as a participant how safe she felt. You could see people cleaning. There, if somebody didn't have their mask on, there was somebody there to, basically ask them to put their mask on. And so it was just a really comfortable experience. On the planning side of it, I know that there's and I don't know, Alyssa, from my team, if we have the diagram that she sent to kind of show what that looks like, the actual diagram of the space ahead of time. So if we have that while she puts that up, would be great. So then you can talk a little bit about the layout of this and the thought that went into designing it. That's really important.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the whole event had to be reimagined. First, before we even get to the expo hall, walking through registration, we all know that's the main, place where everybody congregates, and it's the first bottleneck you can hit. So we had to really rethink how that looked, both from the technical process, which was touchless, using iPads. We sent barcodes out in advance to everyone. We had very spaced out kiosks throughout the entire lobby for several hundred feet when you walk through. And we had line busters that would basically walk to the attendee and greet them as they were coming. So that was allowing everyone to stay socially distanced, and they would send them to the appropriate kiosk where there was no line. They picked up their badge touchless. Then they picked up a PPE kit that contained a sterilized lanyard, as well as a mask and sanitizer. So every attendee received that when they walked through the door. So that kept the flow going right from the moment people walked in. There wasn't a lot of congregating. They proceeded straight through up the stairs into what you're looking at now, which is the expo hall. Typically in the past, we all know the expo hall opens, it's a grand opening. Sometimes there's ribbon cuttings. We had the mayor coming to speak, so we knew we were going to have, quite a group that wanted to see it, and we realized quickly we can't stand in the hallway and do that. So we changed the flow, and what we did was, he was coming at 10 a.m. We opened the doors at 9:30, and that gave attendees time to proceed to the rear of the hall, get comfortably seated. We had seating for 300 back at the main stage. Working in an exhibit hall really gave us the advantage we needed for, working with a lot of space and having a lot of room to spread out. And that was key.
I have to tell you, Nicole, they have a question on, was there extra costs? I mean, did you do the cleaning, or did the convention center do the cleaning, or was it a shared responsibility, or how was that managed?
Sure, absolutely. So the convention center is GBAC certified, the Global Biorisk Advisory Council Gold Star certification. So they have a 20-point checklist of everything they're doing in the facility that involves their bathrooms, the escalator handrails, and so forth, their door cleaning and everything else. However, inside the hall, that was the responsibility of the show organizer. So all of the seating and things like that, United Service Companies provided that for us, and they're actually heavily involved with all of the certification protocols for the GBAC. So they work hand in hand with GBAC. So we felt they were the obvious partner for this whole thing, being that they had come up with a lot of this, and they're adhering to a higher standard. So as we're all learning this, they've been the leader on it. So they provided that, and the convention center also supplemented everything for the facility.
Perfect. And if they're saying the number of virtual attendees was 8,225, you called them virtual views and virtual attendees. How are those counted? If I attended more than one virtual session, was I counted more than once?
So that was total, right? So throughout the day.
Perfect. And then did you have to allot more time for breaks during the sessions for sanitizing? And if
Yes.
so, how much time did you allot?
We allowed 15 minutes between, which allowed the crew to come in and spray them down, and we proceeded on. So we had to have those breaks. That really was a big, hurdle in the programming, because you want to keep going with the speakers all the time, but that had to happen because people are moving and getting up and coming back down. However, again, being in that one large space really was helpful with that.
Yeah.
They were able to get in there and move very quickly. Also, the stage chairs were always sanitized. All of the soft furnishings in the hall by court were sanitized the entire time. So there was a lot of sanitation going on all day long.
And Alyssa, will you please move back to the slide, the slide for Nicole with the setups showing? So I attended virtually myself, and I had it looked like it was a really well-run event. And I actually watched the videos, and they were showing all the different people that were involved with the spraying and really just taking care. There's a lot of questions about pricing involved with this extra spray, and I think we're overlooking at that piece of it as an industry, those of us that keep asking about that, because every single company is being responsible that I'm working with, and our planners are being responsible. So we're doing things to complement what the hotels are doing and what our other venues are doing, so that we're all in this together. So everybody's doing that. So every venue has their own policies. Even the Orange County and Orlando Convention Center had their own cleaning and policies, and their certification requires them to do certain things. And I'm sure you did certain things. So everybody, and court furniture did certain things. So everybody's involved with that. Were you charged any extra fees for that?
So we were very fortunate. Everyone was coming together to bring this industry back. So we had gracious sponsors. United provided all of that for us to help the industry. In a normal situation, I think we're going to have to look at in the future, cleaning is no longer just sweeping, vacuuming the carpet and emptying trash cans. It's gone, to a much more comprehensive level. There was a lot of new vendors on the show that have a lot of sanitation products. There are, JHL has this equipment that normally is used in hospital rooms, and it sanitizes so well that a scalpel can be used by a surgeon. They're now marketing this to our industry. So it's going to be, I think, the sanitation moving forward is something we're going to have to look at, and budgets are probably going to need to be reconfigured to accommodate that, on our day-to-day.
Absolutely. And then for the technology that you were using for the check-in process, what did you use that was touchless?
So we did it, we used CDS registration, which they were a generous sponsor as well. They would basically, they had an iPad, and the phone would look at the iPad, they would match up, the CDS registration staff would hit a button, and then the badge would print. It was very simple and straightforward. The attendee grabbed the badge themselves right off the printer, and then they proceeded to put it on their lanyard, So really the contact was minimal.
Great. And I get that I'm frustrated with the next thing I'm going to ask you. So there's a lot of, I said this at the beginning, and the one thing I say on these calls that I don't want to do is say anything really negative. We want to be positive about meeting face to face, but there are a lot of naysayers out there that are just trying to pick apart our ability to do this. And one of the things that comes up is the sanitation certifications, or how do you know for sure somebody is actually sanitizing? How can you know exactly what's being done to keep safe? Do you have any feedback to those people who are saying that?
Yeah, though that's great and it's fair because there's so many things that are invisible that you don't see. You know, I think just like any other vendor we work with, you know, we know when our audiovisual is happening or not. We know, you know, coming from the general service side, you know when tables or chairs are out there. This is a little bit different. So we did go into great detail about how often it would be done. For example, the sanitation behind the chairs. Our staff was checking to make sure that was happening throughout the day. You know, the other items, you really, I think when you're looking at this and it's really about staffing and watching staff. So they were out there. And I heard that constantly from all the attendees. They saw them, we saw them, and they were put on a schedule. And I think that's where that certification really is important for both the facilities, you know, and the planners using these facilities, because even when we did our planning meetings at the convention center when no one was in the building, the same crews were out there cleaning all the time without even, you know, if 5 of us were in there, they were behind us cleaning. So
Yeah.
I felt very safe, you know, even during that process, and the masks, and we were temperature checked even when we went in, you know, prior to the event. So there's an element of trust in everything we do.
Yes.
But I feel that what they've done with the procedures for the facility, and then really the facility they worked hand in hand with us, but they wanted to make sure we were in compliance with everything that we needed to do. So it was a great collaboration between the convention center team and our team.
And it's really, I always say inspect what you expect. I know part of what I do is I check, but it's really not difficult to see some of the differences. There's people that's sole job is to really just clean. So like we used to have people that would greet. Now you just have people that are cleaning all over the hotel, cleaning, i.e. disinfecting. So it's very, very visual. And in addition to these certifications, a lot of properties are putting their own systems in place. And I think the important thing is asking the venues you're working with for what their system is in writing, and then making sure that that's incorporated into your planning of it, and that you're checking to make sure that, you know, that's being done. Spot check it. If it's being done, you know it's being done. And that's really a great way to do that. So thank you, Nicole, very much. Please stay on camera. And right now I'm going to invite the rest of the panel to come back on. And we're going to share some regional updates. And I'm going to ask you a few more questions. But I'm going to kick it off with starting with you, Nicole, since we just talked regionally. What are you allowed to have, and where are you at first? And what size of meetings are you guys allowed to have in your area?
So I'm in Orlando, Florida, and right now we're at 50% capacity in phase 2. So, you know, we were able to have in that space up to 1,200, or not 1,200, I'm sorry. We were able to have 10,000. We had 1,400. So that's where we are in Orlando. Every city is different. We're looking at taking together again on the road, and we have various cities, and we're looking at working closely with these cities as they enter these phases. So we were fortunate, and that was why we were able to host it, you know, with that kind of attendance.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And Janet, I know you're in California, and
yes,
you kind of mentioned on your call that there's really not much in face-to-face meetings. I thought I heard that you could do up to 6 people. Is that still the case?
that's correct. So gatherings of up to 6 people are permitted, and food and beverage service still needs to be outdoors. That also is across the board to wineries. So for wine tastings, that can still happen. But again, they have to be outdoors. But why come to Napa Valley if you don't want to be outside.
Exactly. It's beautiful there. Drink some wine
Exactly.
and be in the
Yeah, drink the
sunshine.
wine out in the vineyards. It's ideal.
Thank you. And Erin, I know you're in Texas and you guys have been open for a while. Talk a little bit about your gathering requirements.
Yeah, so we're in Grapevine, which is a suburb right outside of Dallas. And like Nicole, we're at 50% of the size of the room. So depending on the size of the room, we can do up to, we had a meeting scheduled for this October where we had 10,000 people that were registered to come in, and they now postponed it. So, but we can do up to 10,000 people, and that would be a tough one there. I would say more like 5,000 people.
And it's with social distancing, right? I think
Correct.
the caveat is you can do 50, but,
Yeah.
and especially right now, just to be clear to the audience, it's with social distancing. If you have questions on that with any of the properties you're working with, just ask them about that. I know that there's some interpretation for this. I was talking to another hotelier that thought 50% meant that they can put 50% of their highest capacity in and just put a whole bunch of people without spatial or social distancing at the tables. But that's not what we're talking about. As an industry on this call, we're all talking about being responsible and doing these meetings right, especially here at the beginning where there's a lot at stake for making sure we do it. We have to make sure that we're being above reproach on how we do these. Thank you, Erin, for that. And Hillary, can you tell us where you are and what your requirements are for gatherings?
Sure. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and right now we are still operating at 50 people or less, and Washington, D.C. itself has a mask mandate in place.
Perfect. And last but not least, Jessica, Grand Hyatt, Washington. Tell us what it's like in your area.
I'm in Washington, D.C. as well, so 50 people and masks are required.
Perfect. Thanks, you guys. I appreciate that. And I want to just ask you guys to give some feedback since you've all had a meeting. Can you tell us if there was any contact tracing done? If there was, tell us how that happened. If there wasn't, if you can tell us, have you done any follow-up to know if anybody had COVID or if there was anything reported, or how are you managing that? I'm going to kick that off with Nicole.
Thanks, Michelle. We did not do contact tracing as a private entity. We rely on the Florida Department of Health to do that. We test more than any other state right now, and there's a testing facility at the convention center. To date, there have been no reports to us or to the convention center of any event.
Perfect. Janet?
Well, I'll just speak as a meeting attendee, which the meeting I attended was 2 weeks ago. I have not been notified of any cases that popped up. I'm not aware that they were doing contact tracing, but again, I didn't receive any notification of any issue.
Perfect. And Erin?
We did not do any contact tracing, no.
And you have had no notifications of any?
No, none. In fact, we got a letter back from the person that put the meeting on and just said how great the meeting was and didn't even bring that up. So.
Thank you. Hillary?
Well, I haven't personally experienced contact tracing. I did, in an effort to educate myself, take a contact tracing course, which is free through Johns Hopkins. It was a phrase that kept on coming up, and I just wanted to better understand how to consult my clients and the details around it, so I could understand how involved we as the organizers of events should be with contact tracing. And I definitely feel as you should leave it to the healthcare professionals who know exactly what to do and how to contact and are HIPAA compliant and all of those elements. But it was definitely beneficial to take the free course so I could better understand it myself.
Perfect. And Jessica?
We did not do contact tracing, and we have not been contacted either by the health department that anyone has tested
So
positive.
I think it's a common thing that we're leaving those to the professionals to go ahead and manage that. But we are doing our best and putting best practices in place to make sure social distancing, mask wearing, and that we're just following all the guidelines, not only for the federal guidelines, but we're following regional guidelines and local guidelines and venue guidelines and client guidelines. There's a lot of regulations and guidelines we're following, and we're just wanting to make sure that we do it right. And while we're following all those, some of our environments can become non-intimate, like very cold. What are you doing? And I'm going to open this up for any of you. What are you guys doing to keep the intimacy while keeping the spatial distance? So keeping the connection while keeping spatial distancing. It's a challenge, right? I stumped all of you guys on this one. So one of the things we're doing is we're using some plexiglass between, because while you have your mask on and your spatial distancing, if you have your mask on and you have the plexiglass between you and the individual, that will open up some dialogue that's a little more comfortable. So you'll see those plexiglasses popping up, even on, I don't know if you guys seen some of the videos of the future of airplanes, when you ride, where they're going to have the little plexiglass things between each of the seats, which makes it really a lot safer and much more comfortable. But that's one of the things we're doing. Is there anything else that you guys are doing to try to keep everybody feeling connected?
I think one of the things we did together again Expo is, we used larger spaces for our lounge areas. We social distanced with soft seating, and we placed food and beverage at a bar in there, and people wore their mask. They went to go get it. They sat down in a chair, distance from one another, and it was engaging. It still felt a little, normal, I guess you could say. But it's definitely just different. I think people are very respectful of the space. They were at the expo. They were still very engaged with one another. They were just farther apart. But engagement and the desire for people to come together, I think we'll follow the rules. We'll do plexi, but I think it naturally occurs when you get business leaders together and there's things to talk about.
And in that environment, Nicole, how did they exchange contact information?
So most of the time, anyway, now everyone links in with each other. We encourage LinkedIn. I mean, that way, what's your LinkedIn? What's your LinkedIn? You don't need to put business cards in front of one another anymore and hand out materials. We're kind of past that as an age.
Perfect. Before I move on, does anybody have anything to add to the connectiveness piece of this?
Yes, the event I attended, we were all sent an app to register, and in that app listed all of the contacts, but we didn't have their contact information. So you could request the contact information from someone who you wanted to touch base with. So it was all done through an app, but yet it respected their privacy, because it didn't give out email addresses, cell phone numbers, and so on without asking.
And then did anyone request government testers or medical staff to provide support at their conferences, or reach out to any of the local hospitals? Was there anything that was done from a risk assessment standpoint in those regards?
I had a group that was looking, they wanted to talk to the person in charge of the health organization in Grapevine, and reached out to them to talk to them to see what kind of things they had in place, and what the occupancy levels were at the hospitals around the hotel or in the city. I had one group that wanted to actually even talk to the governor. I mean, they were really focused on the safety of their people coming in and everything. Yeah, it was interesting seeing all the conversations going back and forth. I just feel like the city get involved after that when they were asking those kind of questions.
And I think there was, I think EIC put out some new risk assessments. Also, the CDC put out some risk assessments that you guys that are asking those questions can look at. If the audience will look at their chat, you'll see a bunch of resources being dropped into the chat that'll have these links for you. So it'll help you with risk assessment and going through those lists, and it tells you who to contact, and really over communicating, collaborating with everybody involved, connecting with the hospitals to see, what their best advice is if somebody did have symptoms, and how you would handle that. And asking those questions up front, and handling the COVID-19 risk just like you would any other hazard or risk would be really important, that you have things in place for that. And we're all collaborating a lot. which is really important. Again, have conversations with your partners because, again, I'll say it over and over again, we are all in this together. So we just really need to communicate. And I can't believe how accommodating the hotels have been during this time frame. They've been one of the worst hurt in the industry. The least talked about, in my opinion, is what we're talking about right now, is these lost meetings. So they're just wanting to get back to some normalcy while keeping safety top of mind. So just realize we're all in this together. We're doing the best we can do.
Yes.
As far as service buffets, they sound expensive with a lot of extra labor, this is saying. Is there any cost for service or any additional cost for doing these that they're incurring? Are you guys providing the plexiglass, or how is that working at each of your venues?
So go ahead.
Oh, Karen. We've been providing everything. We've been providing the plexiglass, making suggestions, guiding the clients on the best way to keep things safe.
The same here. And, for future meetings as they go, it's probably something that everybody's going to have to take a look at just to, to see where your costs are compared to where your profits are going to be. And, you might see some people having to go up and, on their service charges and all that kind of stuff, just because you're having to add more people.
Perfect. Okay, and then I'm just going to ask you guys, were there any lessons learned that you can share, just lessons learned with the group on your face-to-face meeting when you first had it?
The one thing that I noticed in a lesson learned is the first night dinner, there was a trio that was playing, and because there were 3 people per 72-inch round, the music was too loud because you had to speak more loudly rather than having someone sitting right next to you. You had to speak across. So that was changed pretty quickly when everyone realized, wow, this would be an okay volume with normal 6 or 8 around, but with only 3, they keep the music lower.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I just think it was great to see people excited to be back to a meeting, and traveling. I mean, the group that came into our hotel, I was amazed because I thought the majority of them would be driving in, and I was completely wrong on that. The majority of them flew in, so that was good to see that side of both sides of that. I mean, people, it was just great to see people. 2,200 people in my building was a wonderful day. I'm not gonna lie. So
yeah, absolutely. It excites me when we're talking about all these. So thank you guys for being on and sharing your ideas. I'm going to ask you guys to share one last idea and best practice in just a moment, or a resource. And I'm going to show first, though, a video that I think sums up everything. While we're getting back to business, everything is quickly changing, and the reality is different from time to time, area to area, and venue to venue. Our planning process has to address the entire ecosystem of travel experience to build confidence and participation in face-to-face meetings. This includes airlines and how to get to and from an airport. At the venue, we must address transition barriers, cleaning flow, room amenities, food and beverage, social distancing, and a code of conduct. We've shared many ideas on today's calls, and this will continue to happen as we move forward. So this is a video from Marriott that they just rolled out of all the things they're doing, from the pre-con meeting all the way through to the fruition and your check into your guest rooms. I love it. It kind of wraps everything up we've talked about and with a little bow on it. We're going to drop that into the chat so you have access to it firsthand. There is no sound with this video. It's just a video that just gives us some information so we can see what all they're doing. And it really excites me to see all the things that our hotel partners are doing to make this very comfortable to have meetings. So suppliers, planners, clients, and attendees all have a responsibility to do their part, which is why we are having the code of conduct, and pre-arrival communication is critical to overall success and to getting back to these meetings. This shared responsibility will create environments that are better and safer for everybody involved. So we're just going to go ahead and turn that video off and go back to our panelists real quick and summarize, give us your kind of best practice and resource to share with everybody as a tangible takeaway they'll have. And I'll start off with you, Nicole.
I would go back to the GBAC certification. I feel like that's really an endorsement from the facility. You know, standards are in place, and these are the experts. They've been through it, so they're helping lead the way. So that would be my tangible takeaway.
Perfect. Go ahead, Janet.
In the Napa Valley, we have our local CVB, so to speak. It's called Visit Napa Valley, and they are outstanding in keeping everyone apprised as to what's happening in Napa in terms of restaurants, wineries, and hotels. So that's been our great resource. We have weekly meetings with them, and they post updates on their website. So that's what we do.
Thank you. And Aaron.
I would say take advantage of the technology that's presented to you. You know, Marriott has the Bonvoy app where you can go and you can check in. You can use your smartphone as your room key. You can bypass the front desk completely. Anything you need to, like room service or anything like that, you can absolutely use the app for all that. So take advantage of those things if you don't want to be in any lines or be around anybody at that point. You know, take advantage of that.
It's a lot of great technology has come out of this. I know we have a ways to go, but just I've been amazed at all the stuff. Even those head masks that are clear where you can see a person's smile is just really fantastic. And then there's a new close mask that's clear that they're getting ready to get approval for. It's just been really wonderful. So there's a lot of great technology. Thanks for that, Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
Hillary?
Michelle, one last thing also I wanted to reference is the IAE guide to safely reopening that they did. I would also encourage people to take a look at that.
Thank you. Hillary?
Yeah, I think the World Health Organization also put out a great risk assessment for events, so it makes people feel comfortable and they know exactly some of the details and metrics to consider when hosting an event, as well as DC Events Coalition is a combination of venues, suppliers, AV. We've all been collaborating as a unit across the city in order to come up with similar standards, so it's not so different from location to location.
Thank you. And Jessica?
Yeah, looking at all of the resources that everyone's talked about, I think something that we've done on the hotel side is take a step back and really think about, is this safe, and walking through the arrival experience all the way through to the departure experience, and how can we make this touchless? Do I feel safe doing this as a guest, and really putting yourself in their shoes and seeing how you feel.
Absolutely. So I want to thank all the panelists for being here today and really leading the way and having these meetings in this time frame. You guys, I'm just so excited about having you guys on the panel. You guys are such great leaders, and to share your experiences and best practices with the audience so that they get some tools and they feel more comfortable, and it's about building confidence. So thank you guys for being on here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it is encouraging to see these meetings happening and to hear all the great successes. Collaboration is more important than ever, and we're excited for this new normal. As a last note, I want to let you know that while the discussions have been based on mainly US, we are seeing a lot of movement in face-to-face meetings on an international stage. So we're going to put this slide up real quick and just talk a little bit about these 4 meetings that occurred in the last month. The top left corner is one in Berlin, Germany, which is a really unique setup. We're going to see a lot more of those with the chair and a little table beside them. The top right corner is in Hanover, Germany, where that happened in the end of June 2020, which was a hybrid meeting, and that was part of the general session. But I love the masks. Again, there's still spatial distancing between these two, but they had the mask on where you can see a smile. On the bottom left-hand corner, you have in Madrid, Spain, Congress that was happening, and you could see again 6-foot spatials with just the chairs. When they're in the seats, they don't have to wear their mask. It's when they get up, but this is optional. You can wear it. And on the bottom right is a meeting that took place in Vancouver, Canada. So we're happy to know that our industry is getting back to business and to seeing how others are meeting safely during this pandemic. So I just found this just this morning, and I asked my team to add it in. This is a concert that just took place, and it's really unique. You have your own little, like 6-foot little pod, and you have 6-foot distance between everybody there. You can fit up to 5 people in these areas, family units specifically, and they have little mini refrigerators, and they have hand sanitizer kits for it. So again, live events are happening. These meetings are happening, and it's great to see the unique and creative ways we're coming up with these. Our goal every week is to continue to build confidence and trust in our ability to do face-to-face meetings. I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting that our purpose is to inform, inspire, elevate, share, spread hope, all while we get back to business with safety top of mind. Our hope is that you gained at least one key resource that helped you confidently move forward today. And thank you for making time for today, and stay healthy.